Welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at Flesh and Iron, written by Henry Zhu, Book 2 in the Bastion Wars series. Now, if you recall in the last review, I didn't much care for the first book in the Bastion Wars series. Book Punch! Mainly in the characters they had. Now, this book pulls a complete 180 as far as characters go. And I think it is a huge improvement over the first. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. And Flesh and Iron has a very particular feel to it. It feels a lot like Vietnam put in the Warhammer 40k universe. Now, if you're a fan of stories that take place in Vietnam, such like Apocalypse Now or Full Metal Jacket, then this book is right up your alley. Now, I'm not saying it's as good as those movies in book form. Those movies are classics. But there are parts in this book that truly shine. That's not to say it's all perfect, but overall, it's a good read. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I thought the characters were a lot better in this one, particularly the main protagonist. Now, this story revolves around Colonel Fyodor Bader, leading the 88th Battalion. And I really got into the character Fyodor Bader. Now, as opposed to the Mary Sue character in the first book, Fyodor has a lot of insecurities he needs to overcome. Now, Fyodor is leading the 88th Battalion, but this battalion isn't from his home world. It's from a different world that's very hostile and dangerous. And these men had to be hardcore to even grow into adulthood. While Bader had a little bit more of a privileged upbringing, and now he's leading these men. And he's worried he's not going to be able to earn their respect because he lived this somewhat privileged lifestyle, while these guys are truly hardcore. They are the men of the men. They do things their own way, and they get the job done. So while Bader's trying to earn their respect, he's just going above and beyond what a colonel should be doing. He's trying to prove that he's as tough, if not tougher than them. He's fighting in the front lines. He's getting into the heat of battle. And it's in taking these risks that this battalion is very half and half on whether or not they respect him. Half end up respecting him because of how tough he's trying to prove he is. The other half is playing it more reasonable, thinking that he's their commander, and if he dies, the entire battalion is in trouble, and he needs to start acting like a leader. And throughout the course of this book, while they're on this very dangerous mission, Bader ends up growing and learning more on what it means to be a real leader. He realizes it's not about taking risks. It's not about looking like the big guy. It's about being a leader and taking care of your men. It's about doing what needs to be done without wasting your men's life. And it's in this transformation throughout the entire book that he's gradually building into this true leader that I really liked. Now, if any of you have ever been in a leader type role, whether it's at a job or a side project you're working on, I'm sure a lot of you can feel what he was going through, trying to earn your crew's respect. And that's where I think the book truly shines. But that's not saying the entire book is good. Now that I talked about protagonists, let's talk about the antagonists. There's a lot of antagonists. Now, Bader and the 80th Battalion, they're sent on a mission to try to strike at the core of this rebel army. I forgot to mention that. Now, on the world this is taking place on, there's a rebellion going on. Now, the Imperium is trying to re-educate the people on this planet who wants to join the Emperor. And there are people who are refusing to be re-educated. And they formed up a resistance and they're fighting the Imperium. And you do find out that there's a few Chaos Space Marines that are instigating the entire rebellion. But as the book goes on, you realize that these rebels, they're not the true evil. Or at least not the entire evil. You actually feel more for these rebels than you do for the Imperium's cause. Now, as you should know, the Warhammer universe isn't a very nice place. In the Imperium, they're not very nice, even though they're supposed to be all pro-humanity. And the lengths they go through to try to re-educate the populace on this planet can be, for the lack of a better word without spoiling it, a bit immoral. And you really understand why these guys are rebelling. You're actually kind of surprised more people aren't rebelling. Now, there is a parallel story going through the point of view of one of the rebels. And you see why the rebels were pushed into the rebellion and why they're doing it, and the lengths they're willing to go through to try to strike back at the Imperium. But where the story falls, I feel, is with the very obvious corrupted priest. Now, it might be a spoiler if it wasn't so blatantly obvious at the very beginning when this guy is first introduced. And you could tell throughout the entire book, he's just standing behind the main protagonist with a dagger, getting ready to sink it into his back. And that guy is just so cliche. The rest of the book had so much going for itself. And I know what Henry Sue was trying to do. But this guy is just, I feel, so poorly written. Or at least so obviously evil. Not really so much as evil, but just plain greedy. To the point where he becomes evil. And I feel that when the actual betrayal happens is when the book starts going down the slope. As the book's coming to an end, I wouldn't say it's bad. It's just nowhere near as good as the first part of the book. Now, even though this book is the second book in the series, you don't need to read the first book to understand what's going on, which is a good thing. This book is a prequel, and it's very loosely connected to the first book. In fact, only at the very end do they try to connect it really quickly. But fortunately, you're not going to have to read the first one to get this one. Obviously, I enjoy this book. Don't worry, I'm not going to be punching it. And that's my opinion. Take it for what it's worth.